My first opera, Prima Donna, was premiered in Manchester at the Manchester International Festival.
Now, this was the opera that Peter Gelb had originally talked to you about writing for the Met.
Yes.
And
this opera has a legendary.
It has a checkered past,
story,
although it has almost no past.
Yeah.
You wanted to write the opera in French. Why?
Yes. Well, I was originally commissioned to write the opera by Peter Gelb, who, by the way, is doing great things with the Met, and I really love the work he's done. But anyways, he originally commissioned it, and I wasn't under the pretext that it had to be in English necessarily. And I started, in fact, I even started writing it in English. But then as I went on, I realized that the music was so romantic and so kind of fantasiaque of the last century, and my influences like Ravel and Berlioz and Puccini were really kind of coming out full force, and that the language was, I don't know, I was just having trouble fixing those two elements, and so I just sort of shifted over to French, which I speak because I was brought up in Montreal, so it's not a stretch for me, and it just, all of a sudden the music started to come out of the words more, and really started to propel the project forward. Anyways, Peter got wind of this, and initially was okay as long as I'd change it, back into English. But it soon became apparent that I didn't want to, and then he said, well, we commissioned an American work, and an American work has to be in English. I don't know, whatever, and we went our separate ways. My only whatever. So we went our separate ways, and then the Manchester Festival, Alex Poots quickly picked me up because a lot of people had heard about this and were very interested in it. And it's now it's premiering in London in the spring, in April, and also in Toronto at the Illuminata Festival, which is in June. And then also, though I'm not going to say anything concrete, I am performing, and they are doing a section of the opera with an opera singer, and I'm singing as well at the New York City Opera Gala, which is on November 5th at the newly renovated State Theater.
It's not the State Theater now. It's the Coke?
Yeah, that theater. And, I won't say any more than that.
Okay.
But, whatever.
That's enough. Well, now, we've heard you singing opera. You and David Byrne warbling your way through a duet there on one of David's, on his album Grown Backwards, I think it was.
Yes.
So was it weird to be writing songs that you knew you were not yourself going to be singing?
Wait a minute. For the opera. No, it was a relief. I'm sick of my voice. Well, I was just in the green room, and I was like, oh my God, is that me? I'm actually quite self-deprecating at times. I know I'm a good singer and everything. Don't worry. But it's a relief to hear someone else sing my material. I think with any singer, songwriter, that's the case.
We're speaking with Rufus Wainwright. Singer-songwriter is a different thing, being a songwriter and being an opera composer.
Yes,
scale,
very
content, everything is
very different. And I think that's sort of what's been the main sort of lesson of this whole game is that it did become apparent, though the opera Prima Donna is not my masterpiece. It is apparent that I know the form and that it translates, and people, I have the capacity to write in that sort of, it's a more sort of vertical fashion as opposed to the horizontal pop song
a string of songs.
Yeah. So it's going along.
So as you say, it's going to London and Toronto, and then who knows where else?
Melbourne, Australia as well, and then there's serious talks with other places.
Well, a lot of those composers you mentioned as your heroes, Ravel, Berlioz, they'd get that first performance and they'd say, that worked, that didn't, and would take the opportunity. Are you revising?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, no, I'm not overhauling by any means, but I have to. I think an opera is such a massive undertaking that it takes a good 5-6 years for it to come to fruition, really. Totally.
Well, it's something that you've made no bones about. You've been a lifelong fan of the form of opera. opera, sort of the opera world strides through a lot of your own songs.
Yes, it does.
Including Damned Ladies, which is
Yes.
mourning some of the great kind of classic tragic heroines of the opera world.
Yes.
Here's a little bit of music from Rufus Wainwright.
Desdemona, do not go to sleep. Brown-eyed Tosca, don't believe the creed. I see it in his eyes, and why don't you ladies believe me when I'm screaming? I always believe you. Violetta, keep your man locked up. Oh, like
That is music from my guest Rufus Wainwright. Damned Ladies, name-checking Desdemona, Violetta, Tosca.
And all of them.
So this was a part of the musical world you grew up in.
Yeah, I mean, what other 23-year-old would be referencing Katia Kabanova in one of their pop songs?
Yeah, really. I mean, and when you get into the world of Janacek operas, you're pretty deeply into it.
Yeah. You got to check yourself in at Janacek.
So
check out.
I mean, it seemed like you. Well, speaking of checking out, I mean, you have at times lived what seemed like an operatic life, and back in '02, it seemed like maybe you would check out of the whole music game. You know, drug addiction and a stint in rehab and everything. What did that do for or to you?
I mean, once again, coming back to opera, I mean, I credit that form of music with really, giving me a good sense of perspective when dealing with drugs and alcohol and stuff. Because unlike a lot of other pop musicians who, are really stuck in a kind of holding pattern when it comes to, the lush life. Because it is, let's face it, it's encouraged, it's glorified, it's almost expected to be nihilistic. On the other hand, with the opera world, you have to be working on all of your cylinders to create an opera, and I don't think there's really any great composer who has seriously had to struggle with. I mean, I'm sure they've had addictive personalities and they've had this and that, to deal with. But when it gets down to producing those massive works, I mean, you have to be all there all the time.